The text arrived at exactly 3:47 p.m., just as I was arranging the last of the anniversary party decorations in our smart home's living room. 23 years of marriage, and Maren still couldn't lie convincingly. Blizzard shut the road. I can't get back from the trip, so sorry, honey. Cancel the party. I stared at my phone, then walked to the window. Bright sunshine streamed across our manicured suburban lawn, not a cloud in the crystal-clear October sky. The temperature read 68 degrees on my weather app. My name is Elias Crowley, and I'm a senior network analyst for a mid-sized tech company in what used to be a thriving Midwestern industrial city. These days, it's more like a modernized version of Stephen King's Castle Rock, all decaying suburbs, chain restaurants, and weathered streets, hiding secrets behind every perfectly painted fence. I pulled up the live traffic cam for Highway 94, the route Maren claimed to be traveling. Clear roads, light traffic, no precipitation within 200 miles. Interesting, I muttered, my voice echoing in our sterile, tech-laden house. Alexa probably heard me, but she wasn't programmed to detect sarcasm yet. Maren had left 3 days ago for what she called a pharmaceutical sales conference in Chicago. Her luggage had been suspiciously new, expensive leather pieces I'd never seen before. She'd also bought an entirely new wardrobe for the trip, claiming her old clothes were too dated for networking. The networking excuse. Right. I opened my laptop and did what any self-respecting IT professional would do. I started digging. Maren's company travel portal was surprisingly easy to access, considering I'd helped set up their network security 2 years ago. No conference scheduled for this week, no travel authorization under her name. My stomach twisted, but my analytical mind kicked into overdrive. I pulled up our joint credit card statements. Hotel charges in our own city, expensive restaurant bills at places we'd never been together, all while she was supposedly traveling for work. The GPS tracker on her car, installed for insurance discounts, showed her vehicle hadn't left the metropolitan area in weeks. I sat back in my ergonomic office chair, staring at the evidence on my multiple monitors. 23 years of marriage, and my wife was spending our anniversary weekend in a hotel room with someone else, lying about a non-existent blizzard. The anniversary party guests would arrive in 3 hours. 37 people, including Maren's pharmaceutical company colleagues, our neighbors, and my few remaining friends from the old days. I'd spent weeks planning this celebration of our perfect marriage. My phone buzzed with another text from Maren. Weather getting worse. Might be stuck here until Monday. Love you. I screenshot the message, then took a photo of the sunny sky outside. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife was creating her own personal blizzard while actual sunshine mocked her lies. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I opened Facebook, navigated to my relationship status, and changed it from married to single. Then I posted the weather cam screenshot with the caption, "Funny how different the weather looks from here." Within minutes, my phone exploded with notifications, comments, messages, concerned calls. The suburban gossip machine had awakened, and it was hungry. I called our bank and froze our joint accounts, temporarily suspending Maren's credit cards. Not illegal. My name was on everything, just inconvenient for someone trying to impress their lover with expensive dinners. Then I waited. At 6:15 p.m., exactly 38 minutes after the first guests arrived at our anniversary party, Maren's car screeched into our driveway. Maren burst through our front door like a hurricane in designer heels, her face flushed with panic and rage. The party guests, our neighbors, her work colleagues, my old college buddies, fell silent as she stormed into the living room, where I stood calmly beside the anniversary cake. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she hissed, trying to keep her voice low but failing spectacularly. "Why did you post that garbage online?" I smiled, raising my wine glass to the stunned crowd. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my wife, Maren. She just drove back from a blizzard that apparently doesn't exist." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. 37 pairs of eyes ping-ponged between us like we were the world's most uncomfortable tennis match. "Elias, you're being ridiculous," Maren said, forcing a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "The weather cleared up. I drove straight here as soon as I could." "Interesting," I replied, pulling out my phone. "Because according to your car's GPS, you never left the city, and according to your company's travel portal, there was no conference scheduled this week." Maren's face went pale. Her best friend, Jen Treadwell, who worked in HR at the pharmaceutical company, stepped forward protectively. "This is inappropriate, Elias," Jen said, her voice sharp with authority. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" I turned to address the crowd, my voice carrying the bitter edge I'd been suppressing for months. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me share some interesting meteorological data with you." I connected my phone to our smart TV, displaying the weather cam footage. "This is Highway 94 at 3:47 p.m. today, exactly when my dear wife texted me about the terrible blizzard keeping her away from our anniversary party." The crystal-clear road conditions filled our 65-inch screen. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "And this," I continued, swiping to the next screen, "is her credit card statement showing hotel charges right here in our own city for the past 3 nights." "Elias, stop," Maren whispered, but her voice had lost all authority. "But wait, there's more," I announced like a demented game show host. "Let me introduce you all to Nolan Trent, Maren's regional manager and apparent conference companion." I displayed the call logs, dozens of late-night conversations, hundreds of text messages, all while she was supposedly in business meetings. The room erupted in whispers. Someone's wine glass clinked as they set it down too hard. Mrs. Henderson from next door audibly gasped. Nolan Trent himself stood near our kitchen island, his face cycling through confusion, panic, and rage. 46 years old, artificially tan, wearing the kind of expensive casual clothes that screamed mid-life crisis. He was married to a sweet woman named Carol, who thankfully hadn't been invited to our little gathering. "You son of a—" Nolan started forward, but I held up my hand. "Careful, Nolan. Your wife might see this on social media. Oh wait, she probably already has, since I tagged you in my relationship status update." Nolan's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. His face went white as he read the incoming messages. "You're insane," Maren said, tears starting to flow. "This is our anniversary party. Our friends are here. How could you humiliate me like this?" "Humiliate you?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Maren, you humiliated yourself. I just provided the weather report." Jen stepped closer to Maren, putting a protective arm around her shoulders. "Come on, honey. We're leaving. Elias is having some kind of breakdown." "Actually," I said, pulling up one more screen on the TV, "I think you'll want to see this first." The hotel security footage I'd obtained through a contact in the industry filled the screen. Maren and Nolan entering the Riverside Inn together, his hand on her lower back, her laughing at something he whispered in her ear. The room fell completely silent, except for the sound of Maren's sobbing. 23 years, I said quietly, looking directly at my wife. 23 years of marriage, and you couldn't even come up with a believable lie for our anniversary. I walked to the front door and held it open. I think this party's over. The next morning, I woke up alone in our king-sized bed for the first time in over 2 decades. Maren had fled to Jen's house after the party disaster, taking only a hastily packed overnight bag and what remained of her dignity. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since 6 a.m. Text messages ranged from supportive, "Dude, you're better off without her," to concerned, "Are you okay?" to judgmental. That was harsh, even for you, Elias. Our 17-year-old daughter, Ruby, had been at her friend's house during the party, but social media had filled her in on every humiliating detail. She called me at 7:30 a.m., her voice shaking with fury. "Dad, what did you do? Everyone at school is talking about it. There are videos on TikTok, videos of mom crying. Your mother made her choices, Ruby. I just made sure people knew the truth. You destroyed her in front of everyone. How could you be so cruel? I stared at the ceiling, feeling the first pangs of doubt creep in. But then I remembered the hotel footage, the lies, the months of working late, and client dinners that suddenly made perfect sense. She destroyed us first, sweetheart. I just made it public. Ruby hung up on me. By noon, the neighborhood gossip network had reached peak velocity. Mrs. Henderson knocked on my door with a casserole and hungry eyes for details. The mailman lingered longer than necessary, clearly hoping for a glimpse of drama. Even the lawn care service slowed down when they passed our house. I spent the day working from my home office, but my mind wasn't on network configurations and security protocols. It was on revenge. Maren thought she could humiliate me quietly, slowly, with secret affairs and elaborate lies. She thought I'd never find out, or if I did, I'd suffer in silence to preserve our perfect suburban image. She was wrong. I started with social engineering, my specialty. A few carefully placed phone calls to mutual acquaintances, sharing my concern about Maren's recent behavior. I mentioned the credit card irregularities, the mysterious travel expenses, the way she'd been acting strange lately. By Tuesday, 3 different neighbors had called to check on me, each one fishing for more details about the affair. I gave them just enough truth to keep the story alive. Wednesday brought the first real confrontation. I was at the Blizzard Tap Room, a local dive bar that had become my refuge, when Nolan Trent walked in. He spotted me immediately and strutted over like he owned the place. "We need to talk," he said, sliding uninvited into the booth across from me. I looked up from my beer and smiled. "Nolan, how's married life treating you these days?" His jaw tightened. "You had no right to drag me into your marital problems." "Marital problems?" I laughed. "Is that what we're calling adultery now? How progressive. Look, what happened between Maren and me is exactly what everyone thinks it is," I interrupted. "You're sleeping with my wife. We're sleeping with my wife. Past tense, I hope, unless you enjoy explaining yourself to Carol." Nolan leaned forward, trying to look intimidating. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Sitting here in your little tech bubble playing with your computers. You have no idea what kind of man I am." I studied his face, the artificially white teeth, the expensive haircut, the gym-sculpted physique that screamed insecurity. "I know exactly what kind of man you are, Nolan. You're the kind who thinks expensive cologne can mask the smell of desperation." The bar had gone quiet. The regulars, blue-collar workers, retirees, and local characters were all watching our conversation with undisguised interest. "Maren deserves better than you," Nolan said, his voice rising. "She's ambitious, intelligent, successful. She needs a man who can match her energy." "Energy?" I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the bar. "Is that what you call it when she lies about blizzards that don't exist? When she steals money from our joint accounts to pay for hotel rooms? When she destroys 23 years of marriage for a midlife crisis with a spray-tanned middle manager?" The bar erupted in murmurs and chuckles. Someone whistled low. Nolan's face flushed red. "You don't know what you're talking about," he sputtered. "Don't I?" I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd labeled Evidence. "Should I show everyone the expense reports you've been filing for your romantic getaways? Because I'm pretty sure your company doesn't reimburse for champagne and lingerie." Nolan shot to his feet, knocking over his chair. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I smiled and started scrolling through the documents I'd obtained through my network contacts. Riverside Inn, October 15th. Charged to your corporate card as a client meeting. Funny, because the only client you met was my wife, and the only business you conducted was— "Shut up!" Nolan lunged across the table, but I was ready for him. I stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him into the empty booth behind me. He crashed into the table, sending beer bottles flying. The entire bar burst into laughter and applause. "Easy there, Romeo," called out Big Mike, the bartender. "Save the wrestling for your wife when she finds out." Nolan scrambled to his feet, his expensive shirt torn and beer-stained. "This isn't over," he growled. "You're right," I replied calmly. "It's just getting started." As Nolan stormed out of the bar, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: power. For the first time since discovering the affair, I wasn't the victim. I was the hunter, and the hunt was just beginning. Thursday morning brought an unexpected ally. Toby Kowalski, the gruff owner of the Ironworks boxing gym, called me at 8 a.m. "Heard about your troubles," he said without preamble. "Come by the gym, got something that might interest you." I'd been going to the Ironworks for 3 years, ever since my doctor warned me about my pressure and sedentary lifestyle. Toby was a former Golden Gloves champion who'd turned his passion into a business training everyone from teenagers to middle-aged desk jockeys like me. The gym occupied a converted warehouse in the old industrial district, complete with heavy bags, speed bags, and a regulation ring where Toby held amateur matches twice a month. It smelled like sweat, leather, and honest work, a welcome contrast to the sterile perfection of my suburban life. "What's on your mind, Toby?" I asked, wrapping my hands for a training session. "That pretty boy who's been sniffing around your wife," he said, adjusting the heavy bag. "Nolan something." "Nolan Trent. What about him?" Toby grinned, revealing a gold tooth. "He signed up for private lessons yesterday. Seems to think he needs to learn how to defend himself." I stopped mid-rap. "He what?" "Paid for a month in advance, cash. Said he wanted to handle some personal business like a man." Toby's grin widened. "Thought you might want to know when his first session is scheduled." "When?" "Tomorrow, 6 p.m., private session, just him and me. Course, if another member happened to be here working out at the same time, well, that's just coincidence." I finished wrapping my hands, my mind already working through the possibilities. "Toby, you're a devious old bastard." "I prefer strategically minded," he replied. "Now let's see if we can improve your footwork. You might need it." Friday evening, I arrived at the Ironworks at 5:45 p.m., ostensibly for my regular workout. Toby nodded when he saw me and gestured toward the heavy bags in the back corner, perfect position to observe the ring without being obvious about it. Nolan arrived precisely at 6 p.m., dressed in brand-new workout gear that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing around the gym like he expected an ambush. "You must be Nolan," Toby said, leading him to the ring. "Ready to learn how real men handle their problems?" For the next 20 minutes, I watched Toby put Nolan through basic drills: footwork, stance, simple combinations. Nolan was athletic enough, but he had no natural rhythm, no instinct for the sweet science. He was all flash and no substance. Exactly what I'd expected. "Looking good," Toby called out. "But let's see how you handle some real pressure. Elias, come over here." I looked up from the heavy bag, feigning surprise. "What's up, Toby?" "Need a sparring partner for Nolan here. You two are about the same weight class." Nolan's face went pale. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Nonsense," Toby said, already pulling out headgear and gloves. "Elias is perfect for beginners. Slow, predictable, no real power. You'll be fine." I had to suppress a laugh at Toby's assessment. 3 years of training had given me decent technique and surprising power for a middle-aged network analyst, but I played along, acting reluctant. "I don't know, Toby. Nolan and I have some history." "All the more reason to settle it like gentlemen," Toby replied, helping us into our gear. 3 rounds, light contact, just technique work." The first round, I let Nolan get comfortable. I moved slowly, threw soft jabs, let him land a few shots to build his confidence. He started talking, as I'd hoped he would. "This is ridiculous," he panted between combinations. "Fighting over a woman like cavemen." "Is that what we're doing?" I replied, slipping his right cross and tapping him with a light left hook. I thought we were just exercising. Maren deserves better than what you gave her, he continued, throwing a wild haymaker that missed by 6 inches. She needs passion, excitement, not some boring tech guy who can't even satisfy his own wife. Round 2, I picked up the pace. My jabs came faster, my footwork more aggressive. Nolan's confidence began to crack as he realized he was outmatched. You think you know her, he gasped, backing against the ropes. But you don't. You don't know what she tells me about you, how disappointed she is, how she wishes she'd never married you. I stepped forward, cutting off the ring. Tell me more, Nolan. I'm fascinated by your insights into my marriage. Round 3, I dropped the pretense entirely. My combinations came in rapid succession: jab, cross, left hook, uppercut. Nothing illegal, nothing that would cause permanent damage, but enough to show Nolan exactly who was in control. He tried to clinch, to tie me up, but I pushed him away and continued the assault. His expensive mouthguard flew out after a particularly sharp cross. Red liquid trickled from his nose. "Time!" Toby called, but I landed one more shot, a body blow that doubled Nolan over and sent him to his knees. "Oops," I said, helping him to his feet. "Didn't hear the bell." Nolan ripped off his headgear, his face a mask of rage and humiliation. "You're insane!" "No," I replied calmly, removing my gloves. "I'm just better at this than you are, just like I'm better at everything else that matters." As Nolan stumbled toward the exit, I called after him. "Give my regards to Carol when you get home. Oh, and Nolan, stay away from my wife. Next time, Toby won't be here to ring the bell." The gym fell silent except for the sound of Nolan's retreating footsteps and the slam of the front door. "Damn," Toby said, grinning. "Remind me never to sleep with your wife." But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The revelation came on a rainy Tuesday morning, buried in a stack of digital evidence I'd been methodically collecting for 2 weeks. I was sitting in my home office, cross-referencing phone records and credit card statements, when I noticed something odd about the timeline. The first suspicious charge on Maren's credit card, dinner at Romano's, an upscale restaurant downtown, was dated 6 weeks before her first recorded phone call with Nolan. But there was a second card used that same night, a corporate card belonging to Jen Treadwell. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the data on my multiple monitors. Jen had been Maren's best friend since college, her confidant, her protector. She worked in HR at the pharmaceutical company, had never married, and lived alone in a converted loft downtown. She was also fiercely protective of Maren, almost possessively so. I started digging deeper into Jen's digital footprint, using techniques I'd learned in network security to trace her online activity. What I found made me freeze. Social media posts dating back 3 years, all featuring Maren. Photos of their girls' nights out, weekend trips, intimate dinners. But there was something off about the captions, the way Jen looked at Maren in every picture, the frequency of their contact. Then I found the smoking gun, a series of emails between Jen and Nolan, dating back 2 months before the affair started. But these weren't love letters or planning sessions for romantic getaways. They were strategy sessions. Maren's feeling underappreciated at home. Elias works too much, doesn't pay attention to her emotional needs. She's vulnerable right now. I could arrange for you two to work together on the Morrison account. Lots of travel, late nights, opportunities for bonding. Remember, she needs to feel special, desired. Elias never tells her she's beautiful anymore. I sat in stunned silence, reading through months of manipulation and orchestration. Jen hadn't just enabled the affair, she'd engineered it. Every romantic dinner, every business trip, every opportunity for Maren and Nolan to be alone together had been carefully planned and executed. But why? The answer came in a folder buried deep in Jen's cloud storage, protected by passwords I cracked using social engineering techniques. Personal photos that told a very different story about her relationship with Maren. Images that were intimate in ways that went far beyond friendship. Jen Treadwell was in love with my wife, had been for years, and she'd manipulated Nolan Trent into destroying my marriage so she could swoop in and pick up the pieces. I printed out the most damning evidence and sat back to plan my next move. The puppet master was about to become the puppet. My phone rang. It was Ruby, calling from her mother's temporary residence at Jen's loft. "Dad, Mom wants to talk to you. She says she's ready to explain everything." "Put her on." Maren's voice was small, defeated. "Elias, I know you're angry, but we need to discuss this like adults, for Ruby's sake." "I'm listening." "Can you come over, to Jen's place? We need privacy for this conversation." I smiled grimly. Perfect. "I'll be there in an hour." Jen's loft was everything I'd expected. Exposed brick, hardwood floors, expensive furniture, and photographs of Maren covering every available surface. It was like a shrine to obsession, hidden in plain sight. Maren met me at the door, looking exhausted and fragile. Ruby was nowhere to be seen, probably in one of the back rooms to avoid the confrontation. "Thank you for coming," Maren said, leading me to the living room where Jen waited with coffee and what she probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "Elias," Jen said, standing to greet me. "I'm glad you're here. Maren needs your support right now, not your anger." "Does she?" I replied, taking a seat on the expensive leather sofa. "Or does she need something else entirely?" I pulled out my phone and connected it to Jen's smart TV, a trick I'd learned from years of tech support. The emails filled the screen, line by damning line. "What is this?" Maren asked, reading the first few messages. "Evidence," I said calmly. "Evidence that your best friend has been playing puppet master with your life for the past 6 months." Jen's face went white as the full scope of her manipulation became clear. The strategic placement of Nolan in Maren's work assignments, the carefully orchestrated opportunities for them to be alone, the psychological profiling of my wife's emotional vulnerabilities. "This is taken out of context," Jen stammered. "I was just trying to help." "Help?" I stood up, advancing on her. "Help destroy my marriage? Help manipulate my wife into an affair? Help yourself to something that was never yours?" Maren was reading the emails with growing horror. "Jen, what is this? You told me the Morrison account assignment was random. You said it was just coincidence that Nolan and I were paired together." "I was protecting you," Jen said desperately. "Elias doesn't appreciate you. He doesn't see how amazing you are. I was just creating opportunities for you to find happiness." "Happiness?" I laughed bitterly. "Or were you creating opportunities to destroy my marriage so you could finally have what you've always wanted?" I swiped to the next screen, revealing the intimate photos Jen had hidden in her private files. Pictures of Maren sleeping, changing clothes, showering, all taken without her knowledge during their various trips and sleepovers. Maren gasped, backing away from her best friend. "Jen, what the hell is this?" "I can explain," Jen said, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Maren. I've loved you since college. Everything I did was for us, for our future together." "Our future?" Maren's voice was shaking. "Jen, I'm not. I don't. We're friends." "We could be more," Jen pleaded. "Without Elias in the picture, without the constraints of your marriage, we could finally be together the way we're supposed to be." I pulled out my second phone, the one I'd been using to record the entire conversation. "This is fascinating, Jen. Please tell us more about your plans for my wife's future." Jen realized too late what was happening. "You're recording this?" "Every word, including your confession about manipulating Nolan, orchestrating the affair, and stalking my wife for years." I smiled coldly. "I'm sure your HR department will find this very interesting, along with the police, Maren's company, and everyone else who needs to know what kind of person you really are." "You can't," Jen whispered. "It would destroy me." Should have thought of that before you tried to destroy my family. I turned to Maren, who was staring at both of us in shock. The affair was real, and you're still responsible for your choices. But now you know who was pulling the strings. As I walked toward the door, I paused and looked back at the two women who had turned my life upside down. By the way, Jen, I've already sent copies of this recording to your boss, the company's ethics committee, and Nolan's wife. Consider it my resignation from your little puppet show. The sound of Maren's sobs and Jen's desperate pleas followed me out into the hallway, but I didn't look back. The final act was about to begin. 3 weeks later, the annual Maple Street block party arrived like a perfectly timed gift from the gods of suburban revenge. Every year, our neighborhood association organized this gathering to build community bonds and celebrate our shared values. This year, it would serve a very different purpose. The preparations had been meticulous. I'd spent weeks laying groundwork, planting seeds of information, and positioning myself as the wronged party who was trying to heal and move forward. The neighbors ate it up with spoons. Mrs. Henderson had become my unofficial spokesperson, spreading carefully curated details about the affair, the manipulation, and the ongoing investigation into Jen's workplace misconduct. Mr. Peterson from 2 houses down had offered to handle Nolan if he showed his face in the neighborhood. Even the teenagers seemed to be on my side, having witnessed Ruby's public humiliation when the scandal broke. The party was scheduled for Saturday afternoon in Riverside Park, the small green space at the center of our subdivision. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes, a DJ played family-friendly music, and children ran around with face paint and balloon animals. It was the picture of American suburban normalcy, except for the undercurrent of anticipation that crackled through the crowd like electricity before a storm. Maren arrived at 2 p.m., looking like she'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. She'd moved back into our house after Jen's spectacular downfall. The HR investigation had resulted in immediate termination, and the stalking evidence had led to a restraining order. But our marriage was over in everything but paperwork. She approached me cautiously, Ruby trailing behind her with the sullen expression of a teenager whose life had been upended by adult drama. "Elias," Maren said quietly, "can we talk? Privately?" "I don't think we have anything left to discuss," I replied, not looking up from the grill where I was cooking burgers for the community feast, playing the role of the gracious host despite my personal troubles. "Please, I know I hurt you, but what you've done to Jen—" "What I've done?" I turned to face her, my voice carrying just enough to attract attention from nearby neighbors. "Maren, I exposed the truth. Jen manipulated you, violated your privacy, and orchestrated the destruction of our marriage. What exactly should I have done? Kept quiet to protect her feelings?" The crowd was gathering now, pretending to focus on their potato salad and small talk while obviously listening to every word. "She's in therapy now," Maren said desperately. "She lost her job, her reputation, everything. Don't you think she's suffered enough?" "Has she?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because last I checked, she hasn't suffered a fraction of what she put us through. What she put Ruby through." Ruby looked up at the mention of her name, her face flushing with embarrassment. The poor kid had been caught in the crossfire of adult stupidity, and I genuinely felt bad about that. But not bad enough to stop what was coming next. That's when Nolan Trent made his grand entrance. He strutted into the park like he owned it, wearing expensive casual clothes and sporting a fading black eye from our boxing gym encounter. Carol wasn't with him. According to the neighborhood gossip network, she'd filed for divorce 2 days after I'd sent her the evidence of his affair. The crowd fell silent as Nolan made his way toward our little family drama. Even the DJ seemed to sense the tension, letting the current song fade without starting another. "Well, well," Nolan said, his voice carrying across the park. The happy family reunited at last. "Nolan," I said calmly, I don't think you were invited to this community event." "Community?" He laughed bitterly. "This isn't a community. This is a collection of gossiping busybodies who get their entertainment from other people's misery." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Henderson looked personally offended. Big Mike from the bar had shown up with his family and was now cracking his knuckles meaningfully. "You're drunk," Maren said, stepping back from Nolan. "You should go home." "Home?" Nolan's voice rose to a near shout. "What home? My wife left me, thanks to your husband's little revenge campaign. My job is hanging by a thread. My reputation is destroyed. All because I fell in love with a married woman who was too cowardly to leave her pathetic husband." The crowd was fully engaged now, phones out, recording everything for social media posterity. This was better than reality TV. "You didn't fall in love," I said, moving away from the grill to face him directly. "You fell for a manipulation scheme orchestrated by a woman who was obsessed with my wife. You were a pawn, Nolan. A useful idiot in someone else's game." "Shut up!" Nolan lunged forward, but 3 years of boxing training had taught me to read telegraphed punches. I sidestepped easily, letting his momentum carry him into the dessert table. Pies and cakes exploded in all directions as Nolan crashed through the display. The crowd gasped and cheered simultaneously, depending on their loyalties. "That's enough!" Maren shouted, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Nolan scrambled to his feet, covered in frosting and humiliation. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "You think destroying my life makes you the better man?" "I didn't destroy your life, Nolan," I replied calmly, helping Mrs. Peterson clean pie filling off her jacket. "You did that all by yourself when you decided to sleep with another man's wife." "She came to me!" Nolan screamed. "She wanted me! She told me you were cold, distant, boring. She said she'd never been truly satisfied until she met me." The crowd was eating this up like the best soap opera ever produced. Ruby had disappeared, probably overwhelmed with embarrassment. Maren was crying again, but I was past caring about her tears. "Maybe she did say those things," I acknowledged. "But here's what you never understood, Nolan. Maren didn't leave me for you. She left me because someone she trusted convinced her that she should. And you were just the convenient tool." I pulled out my phone one last time, connecting it to the portable speaker system the DJ had abandoned in favor of watching the live entertainment. Jen's recorded confession filled the park, her admission of manipulation, her obsession with Maren, her detailed plans to destroy my marriage. The crowd listened in stunned silence as the full scope of the conspiracy unfolded. When the recording ended, Nolan was staring at the speaker like it had personally betrayed him. "She played us all," I announced to the crowd, "but some of us were smart enough to figure it out." Nolan looked around at the sea of judgmental faces, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "This isn't over," he mumbled, but the fight had gone out of him. "Yes," I said firmly, "it is." As Nolan stumbled away from the park, probably to find the nearest bar, I turned to address the crowd one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience during this family drama. The truth is finally out, and now we can all move forward." I raised my beer in a mock toast. Sometimes to survive the blizzard, you just have to become the storm. The crowd erupted in applause and laughter. Mrs. Henderson actually hugged me. Big Mike clapped me on the back hard enough to rattle my teeth. Even some of the teenagers looked impressed. Maren approached me one last time as the party began to wind down. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The woman I'd loved for 23 years, reduced to a pawn in someone else's game, but still responsible for her own choices. "Now?" I shrugged. "Now you figure out who you really are when nobody else is pulling the strings. And I figure out who I am without you." She nodded sadly and walked away, heading home to pack the rest of her belongings. I stayed until the park was clean, helping stack chairs and dispose of the remnants of Nolan's dramatic entrance into the dessert table. The other neighbors treated me like a conquering hero, but I felt strangely empty. The revenge was complete. The truth was exposed. The guilty parties had been punished. But as I walked home alone,